So here's the deal. Freshman year of high school, I had a plan. I wanted to get great grades, graduate early, and go to my dream school since elementary school, Harvard, become an anthropologist. And I was on track. I was doing well academically, I had a bunch of extracurricular projects in the works, and I'd made varsity in swimming. And my mic is that's me in action. Oh. But that summer, instead of getting my driver's license, testing out of Algebra 2, going to swim camp at Michigan State, and getting my lifeguard certificate, I slept. You see, the powers that be decided that instead of all that, I should get mono. And not in the fun way that you can catch mono, if you catch my drift. Despite my best efforts, I didn't recover. My symptoms started growing beyond the standard symptoms of mono. I had fevers, headaches, dizziness, brain fog, a racing heart, nausea, and extreme fatigue. One of the fun things I did get to do that summer was visit Georgia. And one day when I was on a day trip to Sonoya, I had made it halfway down the main street before collapsing. My immune system was so compromised that I'd gotten pneumonia in the South during summer. Has anyone here ever heard of Sonoya? Like, raise your hands, no? Yeah, okay. It's where they filmed The Walking Dead. So I was in the perfect place for a walk-on role as a zombie. And I had the dead part down, just not the walking. By November, I had stopped being able to go to school. In fact, on Black Friday, in an attempt to get me out of the house, my mom and I went to Joann's, where I could get from the car to the front door into a wheelchair. And by the time that I got to the back of the store, I was so nauseous that I had to go home again. It was the most fun I'd had all month. And I have brain fog still. Okay, so ever since using a wheelchair, okay, wait, no. My brain often fails me. In the following months, I continued getting worse, and despite a ton of tests, like EKGs, Holter monitors, a tilt table test, and a ton of blood tests, we couldn't figure out what was going on. By the time that I got to the Mayo Clinic in January, I was so ill that I couldn't get out of a wheelchair for more than a minute, even then with my heart racing and trying not to faint. After 4 days there, I was diagnosed. I had postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS. Not the fun way that you can get POT. POTS is a form of dysautonomia. It basically means that when I stand, my nervous system doesn't pump my blood up to my head and heart correctly. And so that's what causes all of my symptoms. With a beta blocker, my heart can calm down, but my autonomic nervous system still doesn't work properly. Currently, I'm a junior in high school, and I'm still working with my doctors to improve my symptoms, because the additional treatments for POTS just make me worse. 25% of POTS patients are disabled to the point of not being able to attend work or school, and scientists have compared the quality of life of someone with POTS to someone with congestive heart failure or someone on dialysis for kidney failure. Before I got sick, I thought of disability as something that I could easily see. I had no idea that someone could be so ill that they became disabled or that there were invisible disabilities like POTS. If I'm not using a chair and I'm wearing enough makeup, I look fine, right? Okay. But I can't last standing or walking long enough, so after 5 minutes, I look like a ghost and I'll need somewhere to collapse. The easiest way to explain my energy levels is with the spoon theory. It was created in 2003 by Christine Miserandino and is now used by a lot of chronically ill people. We call ourselves spoonies. It equates spoons to units of energy. For example, it takes me about 2 spoons to get out of bed, take a shower, and get dressed in the morning, and it takes about 3 to go to my 50-minute class here at LSSU. And those are all of the spoons that I have in a day. I never know if I'll have that many. If I use more than my 5 spoons of the day, I'll have less tomorrow. So doing this is definitely going over my spoon limit. Ever since I started using wheelchairs, I've been thinking about one extremely overused trope. The only examples of wheelchair users standing up that I've seen in media are used for an aha, they've been faking it moment. The one I remembered the most was in an episode of Cory in the House, where Stanley pretends to sprain his ankle to get extra sympathy and take attention away from Cory. This trope keeps me on edge whenever I'm out in a wheelchair. One time last year, I was hanging out with some friends, and we borrowed a wheelchair in a store to save energy as we looked into the shops. One friend kept pushing me in really fast spurts, even though I protested. But actually, I was having the most fun that I'd had in months. And I finally decided to stop protesting, and the wheels caught on the sidewalk, and I fell face forward. I really didn't have a problem. I just got back up and back in the chair, but I did torment him a ton later. And my other friend said that she could see people in the parking lot staring at us, giving us the eyes of, "You are disrespecting real disabled people and playing with a wheelchair." If the only examples that we see of people in wheelchairs standing up are when they're faking an injury altogether for advantages, how can we be expected to know that there are wheelchair users that can stand? I've read countless stories of people with invisible disabilities using mobility aids and getting harassed for it. There have been people with notes left on their windshields, their mirrors broken, and their cars keyed. We as humans have this natural tendency to make assumptions, even if we don't know what we're making assumptions about. Those people were trying to make sure that no one took advantage of disabled parking, but they were actually hurting real disabled people in the process. So through my experience, I've learned that there's no wrong way to be disabled. You can stand but need a wheelchair. You can look healthy despite being in extreme pain. My illness completely changed my life. I learned that changing one detail can change the entire experience. As I was going through all this, I was meeting more disabled people and learning more about other marginalized groups. A term that I learned about was intersectionality. Intersectionality is defined as the interconnected nature of social categorization, such as, but not limited to, race, class, and gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. The term was coined in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw when she heard about a case involving a woman named Emma DeGraffenreid, who was denied a job at General Motors. Emma believed it was because she was a black woman, because the company had only ever hired women that were white and black people that were men. But the court would only let her have the case if she was suing for either racial or gender discrimination. She was at the intersecting disadvantage of being black and a woman, but the court couldn't see that intersection. An easily visualized example of intersectionality is the wage gap. It's often mentioned to talk about gender inequality, but the wage gap is even larger for men and women of color. For example, a Latina woman holds both the identity of a woman and a Latinx person and is paid less because she holds both of those identities. Historically, people felt that they had to choose between black civil rights or women's rights. For example, white women's rights activists such as Susan B. Anthony decided to fight for only white women's rights to vote, concluding that women of color could just get their rights later or simply not caring whether they got them at all. There's an example of this struggle between choosing between civil rights or women's rights in the docuseries Good Girls Revolt, where the actress that portrays civil rights attorney and now congresswoman representing the District of Columbia, Eleanor Holmes Norton, says this: "These women have something very important with us, in common with us. They're second-class citizens, and you and I know exactly how that feels, don't we? Kept from your full potential, paid less than you're worth, talked down to, told to shut up, stay in your place. These women live in a box just like you. So don't be fooled because their box looks a little more comfortable than yours. It's still a box. And the only way that any of us are going to break out of this box is if we stand together. Because when the second-class citizens of the world stand with each other, not against each other, that's how you change the world. So when you help these women, that's how you free yourself." It's not as simple as man or woman, black or white, rich or poor, gay or straight, or abled or disabled. Experiences can overlap, and not everyone falls on one side or another. For example, this quote really sums that up pretty well. "There's no such thing as single-issue struggles because we do not live single-issue lives." Rights for oppressed groups are not mutually exclusive. Evidence shows that adding one detail changes the whole experience. So we can't be like that court was. They understood the parts, but not the whole. Human experience is not that simple. We can't just pick either or. When I got sick, we had to figure out a way to handle my education. While trying to figure that out, it was implied to me that I reassess my goals, make them more realistic. The only thing that had changed, the only intersection that was added, was becoming chronically ill. I still have my goals. I just have to reach them a different way. Just because of this disadvantage, I was at this disadvantage of being ill. I was expected to lower my goals. And I have only one thing to say to that, and it's a line from a song by my favorite rapper, Dessa. I've got a lot of imperfections, but I don't count my ambition in them. The worst thing that ever happened to me was also the biggest learning experience of my life. But it doesn't take a life-changing experience to learn. I don't know what it's like to be a black woman, a trans Asian person, a gay Latinx person, a blind person, or an immigrant. I do not know what I do not know. What I can do is listen to and learn their experiences, learn their stories, and amplify their voices. Accepting your privileges shouldn't be a daunting or guilt-ridden thing. If we acknowledge the privileges we have, that's how we can start to tackle the issues. It's kind of like saying, accepting you have a problem is the first step to recovery. After that, we have to be open to learn. Humanity will benefit when more people listen to each other. To quote from Disney's Pocahontas, if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew you never knew. Thank you.